You've probably heard the term government shutdown on the news, but what does it actually mean? It sounds pretty dramatic, right? Well, let's break it down. Imagine the US government is like a giant household. Every year, it needs a budget to pay its bills, things like national defense, parks, social security, and salaries for millions of federal employees. This budget isn't just one big bill. It's actually made up of 12 separate appropriation bills. Congress, which is made up of the House of Representatives and the Senate, is in charge of passing these bills. Once they pass, the president signs them into law. This whole process is supposed to be finished by October 1st, which is the start of the government's fiscal year. So, what happens when they can't agree? If Congress and the president can't come to an agreement on one or more of these spending bills by the deadline, the government runs out of legal authority to spend money. And that's a shutdown. Think of it like your credit card being frozen because you haven't paid the bill. The government can't legally spend money on things that are considered non-essential. Now, non-essential might sound like these services aren't important, but that's not really the case. It just means they aren't immediately critical for national security or safety. So, during a shutdown, things like national parks and museums close their doors. Passport and visa processing can slow to a crawl. Scientific research projects get put on hold. And hundreds of thousands of federal workers are furloughed, meaning they are sent home without pay. This includes people who work for the IRS, the Environmental Protection Agency, and even NASA. On the other hand, essential services keep running. This includes active-duty military personnel, air traffic controllers, federal law enforcement, and postal workers. Social Security and Medicare payments also continue to go out because their funding is handled differently. But even though these essential employees have to keep working, they often don't get paid until the shutdown is over. Imagine having to go to work every day without knowing when your next paycheck will arrive. It creates a lot of stress and uncertainty for these families. So why do shutdowns happen? Almost always, it's because of political disagreements. The two major parties, Democrats and Republicans, might have very different ideas about how much money should be spent and where it should go. These disagreements can be about big picture issues like the national debt, or specific policies like healthcare, immigration, or environmental regulations. When neither side is willing to compromise, they can use the budget deadline as a bargaining chip, leading to a stalemate. The economic impact can be huge. A shutdown slows down the whole economy. Federal workers and contractors lose income, which means they spend less money in their local communities. Businesses that rely on government services or tourism from national parks suffer. It's estimated that shutdowns can cost the US economy billions of dollars, and the longer they last, the worse it gets. Plus, it can shake people's confidence in the government's ability to function properly. Historically, shutdowns have happened a number of times, with some lasting just a day and others stretching on for over a month. The longest shutdown in US history was from late 2018 into early 2019, lasting 35 days. Each time, it causes real disruption for real people. So, a government shutdown is basically a self-inflicted crisis caused by political gridlock. It affects everything from our national parks to our economy and puts immense pressure on federal workers and their families. Political debates in Washington really impact everyone across the country. You know, when a government shutdown hits, it's not just a headline you see on the news. It's a real-life crisis that ripples through communities across the country. It affects everything from our national parks to our economy and puts immense pressure on federal workers and their families. Today, we are going to unpack what a government shutdown really means, who gets hurt the most, and why it keeps happening. So, what exactly triggers a shutdown? Simply put, a government shutdown happens when Congress fails to pass funding legislation to finance government operations. The US government operates on a fiscal year that starts on October 1st. Before this date, Congress must pass 12 different appropriations bills to fund various federal agencies. If they can't agree on these bills, or at least pass a temporary measure called a continuing resolution, non-essential government services come to a grinding halt. Think of it like a household budget. If you don't have money allocated for groceries or electricity, you can't buy food or keep the lights on. For the government, this means agencies that are considered non-essential must close their doors. But what's non-essential? This is where it gets tricky. Essential services are those related to national security, public safety, and other critical functions. This includes air traffic control, law enforcement, border protection, and active-duty military operations. These services continue, but the people providing them often have to work without pay. Now, Let's talk about the non-essential services. This term is a bit misleading because these services are incredibly important to millions of Americans. We are talking about national parks and museums closing their gates to visitors. Imagine planning a family trip to the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone, only to find it locked up. This doesn't just ruin vacations, it devastates local economies that rely on tourism. Small businesses like hotels, restaurants, and souvenir shops that surround these attractions suffer massive losses in revenue. Scientific research also takes a huge hit. Agencies like NASA and the National Science Foundation have to suspend many of their projects. This means groundbreaking research on everything from climate change to medical advancements gets put on hold. Experiments can be ruined, data collection is interrupted, and the long-term progress of science is stalled. It's a setback that can take years to recover from. But perhaps the most immediate and personal impact is felt by the federal workers themselves. During a shutdown, hundreds of thousands of federal employees are furloughed, meaning they are sent home without pay. For those deemed essential, they have to keep showing up to work, but their paychecks are withheld until the shutdown ends. We are talking about nearly 1 million people suddenly losing their income. This isn't just an inconvenience, it's a financial catastrophe for many families. Mortgages and rent are still due. Groceries still need to be bought. Car payments and student loans don't just disappear. Many federal workers live paycheck to paycheck, just like a lot of Americans. They're forced to drain their savings, rack up credit card debt, or turn to food banks and other forms of assistance just to get by. The stress and uncertainty are immense. Imagine the anxiety of not knowing when your next paycheck will come, especially when you have a family to support. This financial strain takes a significant toll on mental and emotional well-being. The economic fallout extends far beyond federal workers. Government contractors, who often work for small or medium-sized businesses, also lose their jobs or have their contracts frozen. This creates a domino effect, impacting private sector employment and slowing down economic growth. The Small Business Administration, which provides crucial loans to entrepreneurs, has to stop processing applications. This means new businesses can't get off the ground, and existing ones can't get the capital they need to expand. Even things we take for granted are affected. Need to get a passport for an upcoming trip? The process might be delayed. Trying to get a response from the IRS about your taxes? Good luck. The gears of government that handle these routine but necessary tasks grind to a halt. So why does this keep happening? The root cause is political gridlock and polarization. In recent decades, government shutdowns have become a weapon in high-stakes political battles, particularly over the federal budget and the debt ceiling. One party might use the threat of a shutdown to try and force the other party to agree to their policy demands, whether it's on spending cuts, immigration, or healthcare. When compromise becomes a dirty word and political brinkmanship is the name of the game, the people who pay the price are ordinary Americans. It's a failure of governance, where political posturing is prioritized over the well-being of the country and its citizens. For instance, the longest shutdown in US history, which lasted 35 days from late 2018 to early 2019, was centered around a dispute over funding for a wall on the US-Mexico border. While politicians debated, federal workers and their families faced mounting bills and anxiety. The long-term consequences are also severe. Shutdowns erode public trust in government. When people see their government unable to perform its most basic functions, it fosters cynicism and disengagement. It also makes it harder to attract and retain talented people in public service. Why would someone choose a career as a federal employee if they know their livelihood could be used as a bargaining chip in a political fight every few months? This brain drain can have lasting negative effects on the quality and effectiveness of our government agencies. Furthermore, shutdowns actually end up costing taxpayers more money. Think about it. The government loses revenue from things like national park entrance fees and other services. There are also costs associated with shutting down and then restarting complex government operations. And after a shutdown, Congress almost always votes to give federal workers back pay for the time they were furloughed or worked without a paycheck. So, we end up paying for work that wasn't done, on top of all the other economic disruptions. It's a lose-lose situation. What can be done to prevent this? There are several ideas that have been floated. Some suggest creating an automatic continuing resolution that would kick in if Congress fails to pass a budget on time, ensuring the government stays funded at its current levels. This would remove the shutdown threat as a tool for political leverage. Others have proposed moving to a biennial budget, where Congress would only have to pass a budget every 2 years instead of annually. The idea is that this would reduce the frequency of these high-stakes fiscal cliffs and allow for more long-term planning. However, these are legislative fixes. The deeper issue is the political culture that allows shutdowns to happen in the first place. It requires a renewed commitment to compromise, negotiation, and responsible governance from our elected officials. It means recognizing that the stability of our country and the welfare of its people should never be held hostage for political gain. As citizens, it's important for us to understand these issues and hold our representatives accountable. When a shutdown looms, it's not just a political game playing out in Washington, D.C. It's a self-inflicted wound with real, damaging consequences for our economy, our communities, and the lives of millions of dedicated public servants who work every day to keep our country running. The impact on mental health during these times cannot be overstated. The stress of financial uncertainty is a heavy burden. If you or someone you know is a federal worker struggling during a shutdown, please know that help is available. Organizations and community groups often step up to provide assistance, and resources like the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline are always there if you need someone to talk to. Just dial 988. Ultimately, government shutdowns are a symptom of a larger problem in our political system. They highlight the urgent need for leaders who are willing to put aside partisan differences and work together for the common good. Because at the end of the day, a government that can even agree to keep its own lights on is a government that is failing its people. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this video informative, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the issues that shape our world. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you or someone you know ever been affected by a government shutdown? Share your story. Stay informed, and we'll see you in the next video.